tell us this story. Tell us who you think the principal heroes of this story are.
Well, I think the principal heroes are people that you've known the whole time you've been in Washington, because we've been there roughly the same amount of time. And whether it's civil servants, foreign service officers, military officers, intelligence officers, political appointees, the vast majority of people in Washington give up much more, prosperous and rewarding alternatives to go and serve the country. And they do it because they're patriotic. And one of the things they do is that they honor their oath of office and place the Constitution and the rule of law ahead of partisan politics or loyalty to one man. And repeatedly, Donald Trump found that an impediment to taking bad ideas that he had and implementing them.
You know, I had all those kinds of people in mind when Donald Trump was running for president, and entertained the notion that, well, if a clown like Donald Trump is elected president, the clown won't be able to do anything because those kinds of people are around the president all day and they'll be telling him, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. My failure of the imagination was not envisioning the president's daughter and characters like Steve Bannon, who did not exist in Washington before Donald Trump. People like that around this president, which made it so much more dangerous.
Made it tremendously dangerous. You named a couple of them. We could go on: Stephen Miller, Jared Kushner, Kash Patel, Rick Grinnell, and so forth, who are just blind loyalists who wanted to advance a Trump agenda. The law be damned, but the Constitution be damned. But you still have to acknowledge that the Muslim ban could have been much worse if it weren't for a bunch of lawyers who said, no, you can't do that. COVID could have been much worse if it weren't for Tony Fauci and a bunch of people who said, no, we've got to take 15 days to stop the spread. No, we need real data. The situation on the border could have been much worse if Trump had been allowed to build a moat and fill it with alligators and shoot at people who were coming across the border as he wanted to. And the situation in the country could have been much worse if Trump were allowed to drop the 101st Airborne Division into Portland as he wanted to during the riots and protests post-George Floyd. But he was stopped. A lot of the people who stopped him were career civil servants. Some of them were his own appointees. But I think it's important to understand how they worked and why they were successful, because right now Trump and a lot of the people who are around him are trying to figure out how to get rid of them in a future administration and put in more of these stooges, lackeys, and loyalists.
Well, that's the question. So the question about your book in the end is this a story of how the system and the people in it will hold the system together, or is this a story of how Donald Trump spent 4 years learning how to maybe do a much worse job if he gets in the presidency again?
It's both stories. I think the people in the government understand better how to stop these threats, and I think all of us need to understand what those processes are, because when other guardrails, courts and the Congress didn't work, these guardrails did. But having said that, Trump and other Republican candidates now want to make a new assault on them, and we have to understand how costly that is.